6 p.m. On a very hot day in Austin, but the air conditioning is holding out here. My name is Kuruvila Mani. I'm the Counsel Commissioner. And for those, if you don't know, the Commissioner represents all the volunteers in the Council. And we can't do scouting without all of you. So thank you for being here. Thank you for what you do for your scouts. We're going to go through an agenda. We're going to go through some stuff, hopefully about 20-25 minutes, and then leave lots of time for Q&A. But before we get started, I'd like to ask Ron Walker if you could please come up and lead us in the grace.
Loving Father, you are the source of all that is good. And in your goodness, you give us life, joy, many opportunities to express our love for you and for one another. Continue to inspire us to do your will according to the way that you would like us to do it, because we know it brings us joy and happiness. Bless this group and give us wisdom and understanding as we work through things that of this world that are sometimes difficult to accomplish in our ministry. Bless the scouting organization and all the leaders here. They'll continue to touch those young minds and hearts to inspire them to serve one another and to love you most of all. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Ron. So first we're going to start with some introductions because we have scouters from across our council. And some of you may or may not, I forgot to tell you to go, I'm assuming. Peter's recording back there, and so I forgot to give him the eye sign. So, but I'll start with Jon Yates. Jon Yates is our council executive. So, Jon, if you could just, and then you met Ron Walker and Stephen Levatino, who are with the Austin Diocese. We have Richard South, who is one of our legal counsels, and Bill Cole, who is our field director. And then we have a lot of district executives back there. So if you could just wave your hand if you're a DE so that everybody can see all the DEs are back there. And again, thank you guys all. We are recording this meeting for those who are not unable to attend. And I will ask you to do me a favor. When a question is asked, I will try to remember to repeat the question, but if I fail to do that, please somebody stick up the hand and say, please repeat the question for the audience. Again, we've asked everybody to sign in on that legal sheet back there so we can take attendance, figure out which units are here, and then which units are going to be calling us next week. In the handouts that were listed, there were a bunch of documents. There was a facilities use agreement. There was a liability agreement. There is the standard charter agreement. There's kind of a flyer on the family scouting, and then there was also a roster of your district commissioner and district executive. And I think I got all the forms that were there. Bill, were there any other forms in there? So hopefully you got all of those forms. We're going to cover basically why we're here. We're not going to spend a lot of time because I think many of you know that chartered organizations have been part of scouting since the very beginning. And the role of the chartered organization was to sponsor the unit, to enable that chartered organization to have an impact on the youth in its community using the scouting program. We consider ourselves to have one of the best youth development programs in the country, and the chartered organizations worked with us to impact the youth in their communities. But that's been a changing thing in the last 4 to 5 years for a variety of reasons. The two biggest are liability and risk management. As many of you know, we are coming out of our bankruptcy, which impacted us and all of our charter partners as well. And due to the complexities of the charter agreement going forward, several of our charter partners have chosen not to use the charter organization going forward. And the Diocese in Austin has also decided to do that. It is not unanimous among the various dioceses around the country. There are other dioceses that are continuing to work with the Scouts in their own form and format. And since every council operates differently, we all work with our local diocese, and we are within the Austin Diocese, and we are working with their what they would like to see going forward. So all of your units all of your parishes have received a packet from the diocese. And they have been given very clear direction that we need to do this going forward. So the question is, what does that mean for you as your unit? And you have choices. The first is you can just pick your unit up and move to another charter partner. Move your facilities, and the Catholic entity will give you a release of the charter. They will give you a release of the bank account so that it moved over, and it will give a release of the checking account. Anything else, any assets, trailers, things like that, would move from the Catholic Church over to whatever charter partner you found, and that is a viable option for you. But I will tell you, we can help you with finding that charter partner. It's not as simple as it seems, because many of you guys have a long tradition with participating in that parish, and there are things that go along with being a longtime member. But it is a viable option for you. The second one is you may sign a charter agreement with the council. So the council would now become your charter, and then we would get the bank account transferred over, and any of the assets, especially trailers, if they're extremely large, big, expensive. Hopefully nobody has buses. Richard said he does not want to deal with buses or vans, so hopefully you just have trailers that we can live with. So there are a couple of things that you will continue to meet at the parish facility. Your assets will continue to be stored at the parish facility, just like they are now. But now the council will approve all unit leaders. Previously, the chartered org rep would approve all the leaders, part of the church. Now it would be the council that does it. The council will review your unit finances. You should be ready, nodding notes, because you're going to be asking a question about that later. What does that mean for your finances? Well, at least once a year, we're going to be asking you to give us a position of your financial statement, where you are, your income, your balance sheet, and we have a standard form that we'll get to you guys to do that. The liability coverage is provided through the council. There's one item, and that's the one thing I didn't mention in the form that you handed out, is that there's a parental release required by the Catholic Church for that. Now, have you guys seen that form? Has everybody seen that things? So what you as a unit leader are going to have to do is make sure that every scout, their parent, has to sign off on that release form. That will be signed off in ink and given back to the parish. The parish will keep that, so you're going to give them a roster and signed up a list of these releases. And it's kind of like going back to the old days when you used to go to summer camp and you'd have your roster and your medical forms with everybody. It's going to be the same thing, except it's going to be the parental release form. And then the church will take that and provide it to the diocese. We gave you copies of the facilities use agreement and the liability, but those are for your information. The correct one is the one that they're going to sign and give to you, because all the parishes have been told to sign it and give it to the unit. So that's the official document. This one is just for your information in case you hadn't seen it yet. There is a third option. You may find a different charter partner other than the council and stay at the parish. This one is a little bit more complex, because now you're asking the parish to do something that they're not quite as comfortable with. They are okay with the council because they believe that we have understand the scouting issues and will approve the leaders. If you go off of that, that's going to take some discussion with them, the parish, and the parish has the right to not agree to sign that facilities use agreement if it's a different charter partner. It is an option. And we're not going to take it away from you, because that's what we did with some of our Methodist units. But this one, you're going to have a little bit of work to do with the unit and the parish. So again, an option, but and Stephen, would I say that correctly? It's not a desired option from your perspective? Okay, all right. Now, some of the details. You saw the facilities use agreement. Who all signs the facilities use agreement? You guys looked at the form. It's the unit, the church, and the council, if it's a council chartered unit. So who signs it for the unit? Who signs it for the unit? Oh, COR is appointed by the council, so it would actually be the committee chair. So the committee chair is going to sign that for the unit. The same is going to be for the insurance. For the unit, the committee chair, because the committee chair in our structure is the head of the unit. So for some of you committee chairs who have, you're going to have a little bit more responsibilities than you did in the past. Again, we don't consider it to be, that big. Now let's talk about the COR. Who is the COR? And I'm going to pick on a COR of my very good friend Bill Conrad back there. Yeah, don't hide Bill. So Bill is the COR for Troop 159 and PAC 166. And so he has been appointed by the parish to be the chartered org rep. We are completely okay with the chartered org rep staying on board. They will now be appointed by the council, but they already have the relationship with the church, with the unit, and now they'll have it with council as well. So if your COR is willing to stay on board, have them contact us being me or Bill Cole or your district executive, and we'd encourage them to stay on board. If they don't want to stay on board, and there are certain reasons they couldn't stay on board. For example, if it is a staff member of the church, they really shouldn't be staying on board. So if there are things that need to be changed, talk to us if you're going down the council chartered things, and we'll find it. But for example, I'm already asking Bill, please stay on. He has a long record of service in the council and with the church, so we would like to see the CORs stay on. Now, what about your bank accounts? How many of them have the church EIN on there today? Most of them? Any who do not? Okay, there's one who does not. So if you go to the council EIN, we will switch it from the church EIN to the council's EIN. We don't want to be signatures on the bank accounts. That's the unit's account. We're not going to be there and asking you how you spent your money and things like that. We want you to follow the Scout Oath and Scout Law, be trustworthy and use your money thriftily. But we are not going to be asking for that. But we will help you. And if you need a relationship with a bank that you want to move, then we have a long relationship with A+ Federal Credit Union, and John Demler and his team can help us with that if that needs to be done. Going back to the financial review, once a year. And Bill, can we get that form to the people? Okay, so we'll get you the form. It's a one-pager, and it's just going to ask you to list out where your financial assets are. And unless there's and we need it to file our tax returns on an annual basis. We need to, because it's now a part of the assets. Let's talk trailers. How many of you guys have trailers? How many of those trailers are worth more than $5,000 in a book value perspective? Should I say book or net value? So our number is $5,000. If the asset is more than $5,000, we need to register it as one of our council assets. Now, where the insurance becomes a little bit trickier. We as the council are not going to be paying for your unit's trailer insurance. We can help you. We have a resource. We can help you get insurance, and you guys are going to pay for it. If you want to, if it's in the name of an individual and keep it that way, we're okay with that, and then you can get insurance on that. Now, when you're towing that trailer, do you guys know how the insurance works on that? It's the vehicle, right? It's whatever vehicle insures the trailer. So there's some work we can do on that, but we've just gone through this process with the Methodist Church. It's not impossible. It does take some work, but we can do that with the trailers. There's been other couple of questions, and I'm going to go kind of through these, and then I'm going to open it up for questions. One of the questions was, on all these forms, can we do e-signature? And the answer is no. The answer is it has to be in wet ink. And this is the diocese has asked for, and the parishes have asked for wet ink. So just so you guys know, even your forms that are going to be done on an annual basis will be on wet ink. Uh, timing. When do we do this? And the answer is quickly. The memo that went out earlier was July 1st. And so we're in process to doing that. Was it July 1st, hard or soft? It's a little bit soft, but we're hoping before the end of August we can get as many of these done if you're moving to the council chartered organization. I think I've covered all of the frequently asked questions that we've gotten earlier. Now let's, Richard, Bill, did I miss anything? Do you guys want to say anything? And then Ron and Stephen, would you guys like to add anything at this stage before we get into the Q&A? What's that? Okay, please come on. Oh, you're good? You're okay. All right, so let's talk Q&A. I've tried to address as many of the questions as possible. I know I didn't cover all of them. So what questions do we have now that we have a team of people here who can maybe answer some of the questions for you? Tim? In the email, I believe it was, thank you. The question was, what was the July 1st date in there? In the original email, it asked that we move this expeditiously to July 1st. Obviously, we're past July 1st, so we're now trying to expeditiously move towards, no later than September 1st.
Realizing that we're trying to be as supportive as possible on this from a council perspective, all of us are being asked to make a quick decision here. The decision I think we make to facilitate it easiest is to move from a charter partner with your parish to being a charter, being a council chartered unit meeting at the parish. That's the easiest. Does that mean that if you make that decision right now, you're set in stone forever past this point? No. I want to, we will work with you to try to make this as painless and as supportive a process from a council perspective as possible. And if you find that down the road this is not the best arrangement for your unit and you want to do something different, we'll help support that. But from an ease of transition standpoint, since we've had a chance to work through this with one of our two Methodist. That's both. Is it both that we've had, Bill? Have we had to transition both dioceses with the Methodists to
Yes.
council charter?
Both conferences.
Both conferences. Since we've had this opportunity to do this last December with the two conferences of the Methodists that we support in the Capillary Council, we have the paperwork process figured out enough that I think we can support you and transition this from a charter program with your parish to a charter program with the council. But again, it's not set in stone. I mean, it's something that we can support now, and if it works for you, then we can continue that. If you need to find a different arrangement, we can support that as well.
Yeah.
So presumably there was a charter agreement signed for this year. Why does that not carry through to the end of this year?
Okay, so the question is, if there was a chartered agreement signed in basically January for 2023, why are we not continuing on that? Richard, I'll let you address that.
Stephen in discussions about this new Catholic agreement for the last 6 or 8 months, or since before December anyway. And what we had decided, because there was so much not confusion, but complication with doing this in conjunction with the Methodists, we were going to put it on hold, recharter all the Catholic units, and we told the diocese that as soon as you roll out your new agreement, the charter's going to go away. We'll do whatever you need to do to make them either new charter partners with somebody else or council registered unit. So we're to that stage. And so when you do your release and assumption of the charter, you will be releasing the charter that exists currently and going to your new relationship, whether that's a council registered unit or a new charter partner. Okay? And so that's the old charter's just going to go away at the time in place when you all sign the new release and assumption of the agreement with the council.
This forces on a very highly accelerated timeline.
Say again?
This gives us a very accelerated timeline, in fact, a negative timeline, right?
No, not necessarily. I mean,
So-
it's got to start somewhere.
So Richard, so you're talking about like the recharter process with all the scouts and things like that. That's not happening now. The scouts are already paid through the end of the year. So we're not talking about this individual scouts. We're only talking about the charter with the parish.
Now,
Because you're going to keep your same unit number, you're going to keep everything else. So from the unit perspective, it's not going to really change, except that it'll say that it's a council chartered unit, not a unit chartered with the Catholic.
But the timeline is forcing us down the council path.
Today, but if you want to research and come up with something, and in January you tell us you're moving to X organization, we'll make that happen in January. That is true. So the question is that it does force 2 bank accounts, 2 other things, and that is true. There is that. Yes.
there is one function of the new agreement that is being rolled out by the diocese that will require you to get releases from all the individuals once you go the route with, sign the agreement for the facilities use agreement with the parish. So there is some additional paperwork that's necessary from the kids coming back when the new agreement's signed. Yes, sir.
Question about that specifically. Who is responsible for or I say, who needs paperwork on file from a scout and adult perspective?
Well, I'll let Steve address this when he talks as well. But I think I know that the parish wants the actual signed copies of those releases. That's not necessarily part of the paperwork that the council needs.
Is it for the adults or the scouts?
The scouts, and what we need from you and what the parish needs too. There's a 9-page document. That's the facilities use agreement, the indemnity insurance agreement, the parental release, and the safe harbor agreement. I think are the 4 documents that are contained in the packet from the parish. All of that goes back to the parish in a signed format. What the council basically needs is simply the facilities use agreement that you signed, a copy of it to go with the charter packet. Everything else goes back to the parish, and the person that's responsible for that is the committee chair. And Kuruvila is called the charter organization rep. And if you're a council sponsored unit, it's the council unit representative. It's just a change of title, and there's a sheet on that's in the frequently asked questions that kind of identifies that. The institutional head, if you're a council registered unit, is Mr. Yates. So the scout executive would be the institutional head, as would, for example, the pastor of whatever church you're at would have been before.
Ask the question a little bit differently. So the parent consent release and indemnity agreement, there has to be one on file for every scout.
Correct.
What do adult leaders, if anything, have to have on file?
Well,
Let's repeat that question. So the question was, what do adult leaders have to have on file if the form is for the scout release?
I'm stealing thunder from Mr. Levatino on this, but there's two things that are contained in and I think it's the safe harbor part agreement that has the excellent ministry in the YPT requirements. Is that it?
So
Right.
the adult leaders are not signing the release. We might require.
Stephen, can we come up?
Hang on one second. Let me fix this real quick. On the adult leader thing, what we have agreed to with the parish, what the parish asked us to do, is besides our YPT requirements and criminal background check that the council does of every adult leader, regardless of affiliation, they've asked the unit leaders, or those that are responsible for the actual program and administration of the program in the unit, to also go through the EIM, or Excellence in Ministry program, as part of the church as well. And so the council unit representative and the committee chair will be in charge of making sure that those adults that are essentially the registered adults of the unit also go through the EIM training. Is that fair?
That brings up the question I'm sure a couple other people are asking. In the parental consent release indemnity agreement, either the parish or any of the clergy or employees participate in choosing training.
That's right.
So I'm having difficulty squaring
Well, tell me your confusion.
Well, if the church is saying that registered leaders have to take EIM or purchase training, which it is now, how does that align with the parish not participating in the training?
Why is it a problem making kids safer? I mean, that's the question I have about that. I mean, it's in essence just a double redundancy. Is if we're going to use the church facility, they want us to follow their guidelines on the EIM, and so it's just a redundant mechanism like piping tin. Well, it's basically what it says.
No, what this really says is the parish will not participate in the training. And that's
But is the parish participating in EIM training, or is that done online? Is it in person? Okay.
Yes.
So if we want the adult leaders to take EIM, why don't we go to the facility use?
Steve, come on up here.
Yeah.
You're gonna have some parents push back on that.
Yep.
We're not by the Catholic Church, why can't I be an adult here?
Right. So the question was, and can I have you repeat the question? So
Adult leaders to have YPT, EIM, and a criminal background check, and part of the facility use agreement should have that each adult leader will take EIM if you're going to use our facility.
It is in there. I mean, it's in the safe harbor. I think the safe harbor.
could you guys hear that when the question was repeated? Okay.
So everybody, I'm Stephen Levatino. I'm a member at St. John Newman Catholic Church, former Scout unit leader. So I know where you're coming from. So from a church perspective, so I want to talk about civil law and church law. Okay, from a church perspective, when we have adults with children on our property, we want to make sure that the adult is safe, right? And so the EIM process through the Diocese of Austin is a church process. It's not a scouting training process. It's a church process that requires a background check that the adult has nothing on their background, and it also requires them to sit through a safe environment video and presentation by the diocese of what we expect of adults with children on our properties. And so do we consider that to be training of y'all? You know, you could probably take that to an extent from a civil law perspective, but from our perspective, we're setting the expectation of what we expect of adults with children on our properties. Is it redundant with the Boy Scouts safety training? Maybe. It does have crossover, but where the Boy Scout one is like a video through a computer, we have the parents come in person with actual people putting on the presentation. We expect all the adult leaders to go through EIM, and that's the leaders, the unit leaders, and also any parents that are participating in the unit as a volunteer, that are coming to the meetings and participating with the unit. So it might necessarily go a little bit further than just the leaders. So, but if it's just a parent dropping off a child, parent picking up a child, parent coming in and asking questions of the leaders, no. It's the ones that are actually taking an actual participation in the unit. All right.
So thank you for that. I appreciate the insight. But there is still a requirement, and we refer to it maybe incorrectly so, that it's EIM training.
Yeah. I didn't say the word training. I said, well, you need to go through EIM. It's ethics in ministry. And so ethics in ministry is required of every adult that has any contact with children in ministry at a Catholic parish throughout the diocese. We're not going to get around that. We're also not going to get around the fact that we are specifically not involved in the unit anymore because we are taking the position, because y'all have to look at it from the perspective of the church. When you got to the Boy Scout bankruptcy, the plaintiffs' attorneys were basically saying that the Catholic parishes were in charge of the units, and they held liability for anything that went on going back to the 1950s or 60s, wherever it was. And so we have to, from the parish's perspective, we love the Boy Scouts. We want the Boy Scouts to succeed, but the nature of how we were operating didn't meet the reality of how plaintiff counsel and the courts were looking at our relationship. So yes, in our release, we specifically say there's not going to be any confusion from a parent's perspective or a child's perspective. The Catholic Church is not leading this troop anymore. We're not training, we're not supervising, but we're welcoming. We want y'all at our parishes. We'll walk in, you'll be like any other entity that's at the parish, but we want the parents to recognize that we're not in charge of the troop. So y'all, the question was asked earlier, and I told y'all that I would address this when I got up, and that was the question: is what is the church's preference on who y'all's chartering organization is? That's up to y'all. All right. Me as a personal, from my personal perspective, and as a former Scout unit leader, it's a no-brainer to me that it would be the council. They're the pros, they're the professionals. They have all the means to be able to assist you. They're going to be able to provide you all the backup that you need. They have the insurance set up. So it's like y'all's choice, but that just seems like a no-brainer to me. And so anything else? Yes, sir.
Want to help you, and then I do have a question. So in helping you, so they don't use in a safe environment, and then the word training is never used. It says ethics and compliance policy published, including but not limited to EIM workshops.
Yeah.
Word training is never.
Yeah. So I
Actually is, the email that we got.
Let me put it this way, we're not here to rewrite the agreement. And that's, we'll try to explain it best we can. It is a requirement that leaders go through ethics ministry. Take that as a given. I don't care what you call it. The agreement is what the agreement is, and it's written by the Catholic Church. The Scouts have approved it. It's been approved by National. So this is the deal going forward with the Catholic Church. If you want to stay at the Catholic Church, if you want to go someplace else, that's fine too. But this is the agreement with the Catholics.
AJ's got a question. Let him finish his question. And
My question was regarding that third option, if there is another different third-party charter for it, but yet we're still the facility agreement, does it necessitate kind of the
yes. So
There will be a new agreement. If you choose that option, there'll be a new facilities use agreement that's published by the diocese.
yeah, that'll include the new chartering organization. Correct.
to be assigned?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yes.
Here that says we're permitted, or we may not bring unlawful, dangerous, flammable items in our trailer, and sometimes with our training, we use propane, we use Dutch ovens, those are flammable. How do we address that?
So Dutch ovens you can have in your trailer as long as it doesn't have coals on it. All right. We don't want a combustible event on the property. Propane tanks, stuff like that. No, have it taken off the parish property. It can go with the scoutmaster to their house, and when you go on a scouting event off the parish, just bring the tanks with you. I see. So you would have a situation where you would have to go to the parish and clear that with them and say, look, we want to do an event, and they'd have to give you a sign off on that. But the particular prohibition is blanket unless you go get some type of permission from the parish to do it.
let's move over here.
Yes,
and
sir.
We'll come over there.
Yes, sir.
To rip off that for just a moment, the nice quote was about it, just propane tanks, I know, right next to
Sure. Yeah. So that's an excellent question. Okay. And the question is there's other organizations on the parish that have propane tanks. Are we going to treat them all the same? The intent is yes. Okay. The intent is yes. So just so y'all know this, y'all are not the only group. Y'all are the first of many groups that's going to go through this process. So, what parish are you at, and we'll address it.
St. Elizabeth's in Florida.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So back to my comment. The agreement says you're not going to have a combustible material on the parish, but if you go to the parish and you get specific approval, that's approval. But what y'all need to understand is the relationship is changing from the parish is in charge of the unit to now the parish is going to be leasing y'all space to be able to have your unit participate at the parish. Okay, the parish is still going to be very accommodating to y'all, and I'd hope is working with y'all for y'all to be successful as a unit. So it's just like you would with any other landlord, like your business, whatever else. If there's something that's out of the ordinary, you would go to the landlord and talk to them. Well, in this situation, that's going to be your parish. You'll go to them and talk to them and get permission. Okay.
The back section there, you had a question there.
So if it's
So the question is, he
Yeah.
meets at a Knights of Columbus property chartered by the Knights of Columbus. Are they affected as well?
So this would not apply to that. If it's a Knights of Columbus property not owned by a parish or the diocese, the charter organization, the facility use agreement would not apply. Well, what is the property that you're talking about? Is that a separate entity? So it's part of Sacred Heart Church. So, well, they do own it. So it would be y'all would fall outside of this. Y'all would fall outside of this.
Yeah, that would be a council decision if y'all wanted to switch the relationship with the scouts. And that's up to the Knights, or the Knights to do that. So I'm assuming you're not making that decision just yet. Yes, yes.
That time when we have to give a release.
So you have to have permission to sublease if you want to enter into a use agreement, but this isn't a lease, so you're not subleasing. So really you're just,
Yeah.
right. You would, the KCs would be in control of that particular lodge. And so you would have to make that decision as the entity in control of that particular premise. But I think this is an issue we can discuss a little bit later.
So there's an important thing that I need to distinguish here, and Ron's actually right, is our facility use agreement is not a lease, and I misspoke there. It's a license. So you're licensed to use the property, which is a distinction. So any other questions?
There was a question there, and then we'll come over.
Yes, ma'am. They're legal themselves and they'll be signing for themselves. So we'll have to, yeah. They're an adult.
Yeah.
I was going to go to this
so
gentleman. He's
we'll
been,
come back.
yes, sir.
We would do a charter agreement with the council, and a charter transfer, we would transfer the bank and title, let's say the trailer to the council, and you'll let us do that. We stayed in the facility, we would have a facility use agreement, and then we would have a release form from each and every scout. Those are the four things like after this, the major steps. Did I miss anything big?
Richard, did we miss anything?
Couldn't hear what you said.
Okay.
Sorry. So we would do the charter transfer, step one. Nope.
Are you going for the council charter?
Yeah,
Okay.
transfer the bank. Title to the trailer. We would sign, if we're staying with the church, let's say we stay with the church, we sign a facility use agreement with them, which sounds like it's a standard agreement across the diocese. And we need special permission from the church to go outside of that, and then we get a release agreement from each and every scout in the unit.
There's also an insurance addendum that you'll be signing. Yeah.
And if I wanted, let's say, we do that to keep the unit going without any interruption, and we did find another charter board, all of those things, except the release of the scouts again.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, the facilities use agreement, you wouldn't,
You are,
well,
it depends. If it
yeah,
has-
right.
Yeah, okay, perfect, thank you. Also, your initial FAQ was great. Is it possible for you to write some of these down? So
Yeah,
I can
we-
share
we-
with my leaders?
Yeah, we have, Bill, did we print out the FAQs? There was some right there.
You said, I think you said more stuff than.
Okay, all right, yeah, I do have that.
If you guys, that would be awesome, I really.
Great comment. Part of the intention of here is to get that FAQ you guys have, and then what's discussed and brought up regarding scouting, go into an additional.
And that might, how long would that take? About a week or so?
Optimistically, I'm looking at the end of July.
Let's talk about timeframe just
Okay.
a little bit. Since we got July 1st laying out there, obviously we've got some complexities here. What's the church's or the diocese's expectation for the units doing this?
Our expectation is use due diligence, try to get this done. And we're telling the parishes, use common sense, right? But get it done. And so, we don't want y'all sitting on it, but we do want the stuff signed up as soon as possible.
And if you opt for the council charter unit thing and next month decide you want to go to a different charter partner, that's fine. I mean, the only thing, what this is
You just
designed.
gotta do so twice, which is, that's what we get.
Well, it is what it is, but the whole process in the way that we're rolling this out like we did with the Methodists is the idea that this needs to be not totally opaque to the kids. The unit's gonna function like the unit functions. They don't have a clue what's going on except the adults are signing some extra pieces of paper. And so there's a lot of work that's gonna be put onto the charter, to the committee chair and the CUR is the council unit representative to get the paperwork done and to make sure that all that's done and transferred to the diocese and got back to the council, get the bank account straight, deal with the trailer. But that's nothing the kids are gonna see. So the unit's gonna go on like nothing happened.
Yeah, you had a question, then we'll come over here.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm, so we have to move up our propane, unless we get permission from.
You would have to go to the pastor and talk to them and get a specific exception to it.
Y'all may know this information better than I do, but from like my understanding, okay, I understand about 30 plus of them don't want the scouts. And so I ran into the who said that they had 30 days to go find another organization and get your stuff off the property. That was the Diocese of Austin. So, I mean, there are some 30 plus, from my understanding, dioceses who don't want to deal with scouting anymore. And I hear there's another 30 or so that are still contemplating how they're going to move forward.
That is not, yeah. But that is not Bishop Vasquez's position on the diocese. We support scouts. We're just changing the relationship of how we're supporting you. Okay, we're not going to be in charge anymore. The chartering organization.
And
You mentioned earlier that the parishes had received the packet for so once they sign that transfer, when we get that to the council, who do we work with to transfer the bank accounts and the trailer information?
good question. Yes. Yeah, so the question is, now the parish has signed the paperwork and given it to the unit. Now what does the unit do? What are the next steps? And correct, you're going to start with your DE, your district executive, which is why we gave the sheets with all of their names on there. The commissioners will be involved as well, but the DEs are going to be because they're going to need to get the signatures. You'll get somebody's the unit commissioner. The committee chair is going to sign it for the unit, and then we'll get it signed here at the council, and then back to you to get to the parish. So work with your DE for the signatures.
Oh, is there anybody that doesn't know who their district executive? We can make those connections right now. They're all here. Most of them are here. Does anybody not know who their district executive is? Because at the end of this meeting, let's take a chance and connect with them. You want to introduce yourself just so that you know who they are? Danielle, why don't you go first? Scott, and what area do you serve, Scott? Ed, you want to introduce yourself? Justin? Miss anybody?
Nope, I think we got everybody.
Good, right.
Can I give a,
Let's
Yes.
make sure to connect them at the end of this meeting and just make sure that they think that it's liable, because they're gonna be your assistants. They and your unit commissioners
District Commissioner.
are gonna be your gateway to getting some of this other stuff done, so we can help you with the bank accounts and all that.
I just want to give a little bit of history. And first of all, thank you guys for your patience. So working as attorneys and with attorneys and getting these agreements out and going through the bankruptcy, it's been a long process. I'll take you back to 2002 when the sexual abuse issues really came to light within the Catholic Church. Most of you remember that very well. The bishops meet in Dallas, all the bishops throughout the U.S. They signed what they called the charter, and essentially that became particular law in the United States for every bishop in the U.S. to abide by. And that was to create what we now in the Diocese of Austin call the EIM program, the Ethics and Integrity in Ministry. That basically nationwide is known as the Safe Environment Program, and really was, it actually began here in Austin in the late 90s. That was sort of the catapult for it to create that safe environment of screening persons in ministry that are dealing with youth and young adults, and also with to make sure that there was some exposure to the concerns so that they could be aware of the concerns of sexual abuse. So then when we see the Boy Scouts fast forward go through their bankruptcy, there's a lot of empathy and sympathy because the church has also been faced with this terrible sin. And so that Bishop Vasquez understood the situation that the Boy Scouts had to face. Many dioceses have experienced bankruptcy as well for the same things. So in one way, we're looking at this along with you. Bishop Vasquez here didn't jump off and immediately make these changes like some other dioceses did as soon as the bankruptcy was filed. He wanted to be very diligent about this and said, let the bankruptcy take its course. Let's see what comes out of that, and then we'll make some decisions. So in the bankruptcy court, as you guys know, in September, the Boy Scouts then entered into a lot of negotiations with the different organizations, and they came up with those three choices that you're familiar with. One of those choices was for the religious organizations to opt for a facility use agreement type of relationship. So after looking at this for the years that the bankruptcy was going on, Bishop Vasquez finally made the decision and said, let's move to this. So we took, as Richard mentioned, we had delays because we had hoped to have this out perhaps in January or February. That didn't happen. So we push it out in June, and we think all of you are as well educated as we are on those bankruptcy issues and are going to get it done within 2 weeks. So you see the July 1 deadline, and that's the reason why Stephen and I have said, no, look, if it takes more time to educate the parishes and the scouting units as to moving toward this relationship, we understand that. We're just asking for diligence regarding that. The other thing I want to keep you advised of is that this facility use agreement is modeled after the standard facility use agreement that all the parishes have out there. In fact, you'll see a couple paragraphs where it says omitted in there. And the reason is because in our standard parish facility use agreement, those address issues that are not applicable in the case of the Boy Scouts. So we tried to keep the flow of the agreement the same that the parishes are used to, but added specific types of issues like the trailers and those kinds of things. I wouldn't get too caught up on the words such as flammable and those kinds of things because the lawyers, as good as they are, don't think of every single situation that pops up. We don't like flammable materials on the campus. Well, we didn't think about propane tanks. We thought about trailers, but we didn't think about the propane tanks. So these are the kinds of things that can help us address and make the agreement better as we move along. So I appreciate the comments on those. And the standard agreement that we have for all the parishes, they have an insurance addendum. It looks significantly different because this one was primarily negotiated by the Boy Scout representatives and lawyers in the bankruptcy. And then we also have a safe environment addendum that they always attach to that. And then, as most of you know, that anytime that there is physical activity that takes place with regard to youth and young adults, then we require parental releases. So if you guys have been involved in your parishes and your kids are going, or schools are going on field trips, or they're going on this or whatever, you've been signing these kinds of parental release agreements, or at least I hope you have. So it's the standard practice for a lot of the parishes. So for the parishes, they'll be generally comfortable with a lot of these things. But it is new and it's different, and they're learning as well. And so Steve and I are available to address any concerns or questions that the parishes have, and that you can float up through your council as well over here as well, and we're happy to work with you on solving any of those issues. But I wanted to let you know that Bishop Vasquez is very supportive of the Scouts, and he really wants to see the Scouts continue and to do well, and it's unfortunate that we're having to change the relationship, but that's the decision that we're faced with today.
Thank you. Sure. All right. What other questions do we need to address today? Oh, sorry. Yes.
The attached document, it states chief's obligations not to engage in scandalous or offensive. As we're not a Catholic organization and organized in an interfaith manner, is it the intent of the diocese to hold non-Catholic parents the visit that the students or have scouts in the program to have to be familiar with the teachings of the Catholic Church?
What this is addressing is promotion of, the question was the portion of the facility use agreement that says, could you repeat that real quick? I don't have it
Any activity that is scandalous or offensive.
Yeah. So this would be so basically the exact language is the prohibition that that the troop will not enter into any activity that constitutes a use that is scandalous, offensive, or contrary to the teachings, traditions, or missions of the Roman Catholic Church and parish's sole discretion. So where this is coming from is from the troop level itself. A Catholic parish doesn't want to have a situation where the troop leaders are teaching the children that God does not exist. Okay, we would consider that to be against the church teachings of the Roman Catholic Church. So that's what that falls into. We are not asking individual beliefs to change. We're asking that what is being promoted and taught at our parishes conform with what the church teaches. So whatever the subject is that y'all are going to be teaching the children through merit badge or through group presentations, it should not be something that violates the church's teachings. It could be a whole host of things, but that would be speculative. If that occurred, I'm sure that the parish would talk to the troop about what are you up to. We don't want that to occur here, and then y'all would have to make a decision. If the relationship was the type of relationship y'all would want to continue, the church would say you can't teach that on our parish grounds. Y'all would say we want to, and then a decision would be made on whether you need to go elsewhere. Okay?
Strictly about teaching.
It's teaching and what y'all are promoting as a troop on the Catholic parish.
A good example is St. William's has a free clinic up there that's a separate entity that occupies some space there. That's a typical clause that we put in there in case something pops up that becomes concerning to the parishioners there or concerning to the clergy that says, why are they here if they're doing that? And then it allows for us to, one, enter in the negotiation there for that to stop or to terminate the agreement.
So it does not have to do with any particular. My worst case scenario here is considering a scout who, through whatever circumstances, decides to break the this gets reported. Is that?
No, that's not promoting, that, yeah. We're not asking for people to be sinless in the troops, right? We're asking,
Evaluation of
yeah.
what individuals, especially if we're asking for parental release, to have them know what the grounds are for what, as long as it's teaching and we're as scout leaders, we're in charge of teaching, that's fine. But my concern was, so long as we're not being trying to be held to like any random activity that might occur by a scout that could cause the dissolution of a.
That is not what that clause addresses. That clause addresses something else.
Okay, there was a question back there. Did you have a question? Did you have a question? You good? Okay. Jim,
The letter from the diocese that had this July 1st deadline, who was that sent to?
All our packet has gone to the parish administrators and the pastors, so they have this. They have the packet, and just so y'all know, the reason why we don't want y'all to use this sample that's been given to y'all is there are some things that may change in that agreement in the future. So we just always want the document to be coming from the parish. That is going to be the living document that is going to be presented to the troops. And so if you get a form from the local council, don't use it. Use the one that comes from the parish, and that's the one that you need to review and make sure you understand before you sign it.
What I would assume that we would do in the future, this is more Bill Cole thing than me, is that we would refer him. We have a section on the council website for the UMC rechartering thing. I would expect that we have some for the Catholic parishes as well that would refer you back to your parish website or your parish or the diocese to get the documents from them for the recharter that are their responsibility. Now, the ones that aren't their responsibility to release an assumption of charter, that's our document. The documents that we sponsor, we'll put on there and make reference back to where you need to go to get the other documents in connection with whatever the situation.
The specific document you're with the sample.
That's, as of today, that's the document that the diocese is using. What Steve's saying, that there may be changes to that as we move forward. And again, this is just for purposes of questions today and whatnot. The document you've signed is something that the parish already has or will get.
They have
Maybe misunderstanding
the parishes have these documents.
my question. There's a letter that established a deadline of July 1. Who was that letter sent?
To the parishes.
As a unit leader.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit annoyed that I'm finding out 10 days after a deadline that I'm past a deadline.
I see.
Okay.
So an email from Bill Cole on July 10 was the first I've heard of video.
So the question is we're past the deadline of July 1st. So when we sent the agreements out, we sent them out right in toward the end of June. We knew that was a short time frame. We left the July 1st time frame with instructions that they could change the July 1st or simply enter into the agreement a few days after July 1st, and it would still be effective July 1st. So even though we're past the July 1st deadline, you can still sign the agreement and it's effective July the 1st. Now, we can change or we can simply change the effective date going forward. So, but it went to the parishes all with scouting units, which I believe are approximately 20 parishes in the diocese.
Okay, so it's really the parishes that should have been communicating.
That's right. So, and what we realized that happened, and we should have known this, but we were a little too optimistic, I think, is that we needed more of a lag time there once the forms went out to the parishes to be able to address the questions here.
yes.
Sort of next question. So, assuming that most of the current charter transition, moving to the council charter, transition into the council representative,
Correct.
are they still part of the key three?
Yeah. Yeah. So the question is,
Question would be, does that previous charter org rep need to be the contact on the facilities use agreement? Or can it be any of the, is it
So the question is, if you have a current COR and if they transfer over to the council, are they? Well, the answer is yes, and then they would still be essentially COR, the CRU, going forward. And then the question, who signs the paperwork? It would be the committee chair, not the charter board rep. No, and especially if it is somebody like a Bill Conrad who has a relationship with the parish, then they would still continue to be the go-between.
Did you get a copy of the frequently asked questions? That's okay. This is, there's a document titled Council Registered Units Guidelines for Administration. This is clear as mud, but bear with us, we're working through this to make it as easy as possible. The responsibilities, for example, of the council unit are listed out. The institutional head are listed out. And if it's not listed out, we'll figure it out. But I know it's hard. Kuruvila was saying, most of the time it's going to be your committee chair, especially signing stuff. Could be the council unit representative too, doesn't matter. He just doesn't have any relationship at this point with best relationship with the church. It's his relationship with the unit council for that.
Yes, AJ.
Just a BSA question. Right now I'm the COR for the troop and the pack and the venture crew, and it seemed like that would be an easier model for council to work with. Right now the agreements are signed by the different committee chairs and whatnot, and it sounds like they might pick their own COR. There's still is the preferred model that the council would have one.
Yeah. So
CU.
right. So the question is, if you have like multiple types of units at a parish, does it make sense to have one COR, CRU, or multiple ones? And obviously, simplistically, yes, I would rather have one, but that's up to the unit. We're not going, some venture crews especially kind of do their own thing, so they may want somebody different. But so we're not gonna dictate what happens. It'd be simpler from us if it was the same. Yeah. Perfect. Yes.
Chair member only be within the unit for a portion of the year and duration of that agreement. Does it need to be updated when they move on? Or is that
Let's repeat that.
Yeah. No, they don't. You do not need to update it. They're signing on behalf of the troop for the troop at the beginning of the process, and it'll go through the entire period of the facility use agreement. Okay. They're signing in a representative capacity.
Yes, sir.
So the facility use agreement is a 1-year agreement, but it renews month to month at the end of that 1 year. So some troops might want to have more assurance of longer periods of time than month to month. So they would probably go back to the parish, or the parish would come to them and say, let's sign a new facility use agreement for the next year. But if y'all don't sign it, then it's just a month to month facility use agreement.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Every unit shall pay parish $1. Is that annually? Is that one-off? Is that monthly?
It's annually.
It's actually for the term,
Oh, yeah.
however long it lasts.
Yeah, the term. Yeah, that's correct.
Consideration like that doesn't need to pass.
It's
It's
just,
it's indicating that the agreement is supported by consideration. That's all it is. So it's a legal nominal consideration. The Supreme Court has said many times it doesn't actually physically pass.
but it's for the term of the agreement, not for 1 year. So if you go to the month to month to month, it'll continue on. I think that's it.
Okay. All right, John.
Would you like to? You got a commercial first?
The commercial first.
It's from our
Epic Scouting. Ron, you want to say just a little bit about the brochure that you got out? Come up here. You got to be up in front of the podium because it's being filmed.
So good evening. My name is Rhonda Modal. I'm the chair of the Diocesan Catholic Committee on Scouting, and I'm very interested in making sure that your sons and daughters remain Catholic in their scouting adventures. So I work with a phenomenal group of lay people from all the scouting organizations, not just BSA, but also Girl Scouts, Campfire, American Heritage Girls, Trail Life, and Troops of St. George. And it's a beautiful relationship as we come together and support all of the scouting adventures of our youth in the Diocese of Austin. And Bishop Vasquez, just to reiterate, he is very supportive of all of the different organizations. There's going to be some flyers on the back table about some upcoming events. Our retreat in May had to be rescheduled. It's actually coming up on August 12th, and it's going to be at Eagles Wings Retreat Center in Burnett, Texas. It's a phenomenal opportunity for the entire family to come together and enjoy God's beautiful gift of nature. It's an excellent facility. We also have some training coming up for any adult leaders who are interested in facilitating our religious emblems. That takes place on August the 5th. It'll be at the Pastoral Center. Our Bishop's Recognition Mass is going to be August the 26th. It'll be at St. John Vianney. And it's a beautiful opportunity to recognize the hard work of all of our youth as they've earned their religious emblems and Eagle Scouts the Gold Award and the Spirit of Freedom. So invite you to consider attending that. And then lastly, in October, on October the 14th, we're going to have a 5-mile hike around Lake Georgetown with Father Will Rooney, who is our current Scout chaplain. So I hope I'll see you soon. So these will be on the back table.
Early on, as in my Scout career as an 11-year-old, I quickly found out just how important you are to the program. And most Scouts don't quite get the opportunity that I had, but I showed up to my first camp out for the troop that was just meeting at the church just outside in our neighborhood, and the Scoutmaster showed up and said, not only are we not having a camp out, but we're also disbanding the troop. And I think I recall perhaps a few tears on the way back home with my dad driving home. Scouting had broke a promise to me that day. But then shortly after that, about a month or two later, there was people starting to show up in my living room with my dad. And quite quickly, Troop 1039 that met at St. Cyril's of Alexandria in Houston started, right there in my living room. And I got to see close hand just how important volunteers were to the support of this program. And that troop met at that parish for quite a long time. It went from eight youth when we first started to 75 within a year and a half. They were having inventory issues. They didn't have enough Dutch ovens. They didn't have enough tents. They didn't have enough everything to try to scale up that experience. So I know how I want to first off say thank you for all that you do for your Scouts. We've got 11,000, 12,000 Scouts at the end of this year, and there's only 40 of us on staff. So if you do the division, you realize that we have zero impact on that day-to-day operation for the Scouts. It's our volunteers that do it. So I want to start off by saying thank you. I'll also tell you that I've probably aged 40 years in the last 5. The last 4 or 5 years have been the roughest of my 30-year career for the Scouts. COVID was a chunk of that. Experiencing that, like all of you did, for this organization was rough. But sandwiched on top of that was our BSA bankruptcy. And it took me a while to understand just how deep that was going to hurt us as we walked through the process. I mean, I first heard about it, and like most local councils said, that's a national issue. That's not us. That's the national council's problem, and that's just something they're going to have to deal with. But pretty quickly, the plaintiff's attorneys did a pretty good job framing that, yeah, the national council has the scouting program, but where the abuse happened was in the local councils. And so we quickly did come involved. And isn't there a passage that, yea, though I walk through the valley of death? I got to experience that with the plaintiff's attorneys telling me just how much our council was going to have to contribute for us to be able to continue scouting here in Central Texas. They wanted everything. They wanted all the properties. They wanted this building. They wanted us to lease the building back to them. It was eye-opening to experience going through that. Ultimately, what we agreed to help protect our charter partners and to continue the scouting program here in Central Texas, our council agreed to fund the trust at $4.2 million as a part of a global agreement that got about $500,000, Richard? $550,000 from the local councils. We were one of the more heavier side of that. There were several councils that paid more, a lot of councils that paid less. But we did that to try to make sure that we had scouting program. Still here to happen here in Central Texas, and also to participate and try to make sure the scouting program survived. Because I, like you, feel like trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverence, worth fighting for. I haven't heard the figure. Who said that 30 dioceses had? I haven't heard that. So that's it. That's a piece of information I haven't had. I can tell you from a standpoint of having a dialogue with the diocese that I've never felt like they were trying to push us away. But I do realize that that the bankruptcy caused everybody to look at this relationship differently. And the plaintiff's attorney did a really good job of saying, you're selecting the leaders. You have control of the finances. Therefore, you are just as responsible for the abuse that happened as the local council. And so I can understand why this is happening, and I appreciate the diocese trying to figure out a way for us to be able to continue the program, even though it's a different arrangement. So my hope is that we will continue to have scouting programs at the parishes we have today, and that we're not leaving them, because I feel like the relationship that we have with the Diocese of Austin is really important. And some of I will say that most of your programs are some of the capillary council's finest. I don't want to take a step back on that. We have some changes that are coming, but I certainly want not to lose the relationships that we have. I'm proud that at my high school alma mater, Strake Jesuit, that they have an annual event that recognizes all Eagle Scouts at that event. They didn't have that when I was there. They had to get me out of it before they started that relationship. But there's 25 or 30 Eagle Scouts a year that come out of that high school, and it's a neat event that they do. So scouting and the Catholic Church and the relationships with the Catholic Church are really important to me. And so if you're considering finding another charter partner, let us work with you to try to just understand why, because I would hope that we could try to figure out a way to continue those programs that we've got. Because some of the units here represented are some of our strongest. And I hope that we can continue to keep the support for you. We're going to try to make this, as painless as possible. Are we going to try to, as mentioned, you probably are wondering, well, why do they have to know about our finances? Are they trying to grab our bank accounts? I tell you, that's not at all the relationship that we want to have. We want to continue just like you've been continuing. But we are going to be required by our auditors, since you're now chartered by us, for them to see that we've at least got a process to know that you're following a budget and that you've had income and expenses and what they are at the end of the year. But it's going to be a pretty easy form for that. But that's the reason that we're doing it, is that our auditors are going to require it. Other than that, I hope that we're able to, there's going to be stuff, thankfully, we've already now done this with 2 conferences with the Methodists. I mean, we had very short window to do that with those conferences. So we've at least got some paperwork and some support level. The bank account stuff, we've been able to figure that out. So we can help support you on that. We've got a letter that we can give you that allows you to say, look, you're a council chartered unit. Here's our EIN number. And if you need help to try to set up a relationship with the bank outside of the one that you're already currently working with, we're here to support. Any questions for me? You got to ask me one. Sandra, I'm going to make you ask. No, I'm going to pick on you because I. Sure. So it was important to me and our council that our contribution did not come from Friends of Scouting, did not come from Scout Shop sales, did not come from summer camp revenue. That $4.2 million came from our endowment and came from assets that we'd gotten outside of all that. We ourselves had you call the 2011 fire at Bastrop. It burned catastrophically 2,500 acres at Griffith League Scout Ranch, which is part of the Capillary Council. Part of litigation from all of the parties that were involved allowed us to recoup some finances that went into our endowment. And also we sold some water rights on that property to LCRA. And that's where that $4.2 million came from, not from any of our scouts or our scout dollars or your Friends of Scouting dollars. Does that help answer that question? Is that what you were looking for? Does that count as the question, I guess? Does anybody else have a question? Let me tell you what my son's doing, just to give you a little shot on the arm. My son's, who 3 years ago told me, Dad, about a month prior to going to Philmont, he's the son of the scout executive. So he's lived scouting since he was born. About a month prior, starts giving me unmitigated grief about going. I don't want to go. You got me in a weak moment. Well, he packed his pack, went with the scout leader, and he came back. And I made sure I was in the driveway when he showed back up. Scoutmaster and his son and my son arrived. Son got out on the driveway, and you know what he said? He didn't say, Dad, I love you. He didn't say, Dad, you were right. He said, Dad, I'm going back next summer, and I'm going to go to Rayado, which is Philmont on steroids. It's 3 weeks, not 2 weeks. And he did on his Rayado trek every peak except Black. And that was last summer. And when I picked him up from Rayado, he said, I'm going back next summer and I'm going to serve on staff. Yesterday, Bill, did you ever do this? Did you do the Ranger Marathon and do 42 miles in one day? You did not sign up for the Ranger Marathon? My son signed up for the Ranger Marathon and did 42 miles yesterday. And in 21 hours and made it back to base camp. My son's a little crazier. He follows after his old man. That's the magic of this program, and I know that you deliver on that day in and day out, year in and year out in your programs, and we look forward to continuing to work with you to make that scouting program a reality for your scouts. Bless you. Thanks.
Yeah, we can get John.